Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with our good friend Santo, and we're going to try and have a conversation today. I hope you enjoy it. So, with that said, let's get right to it. Let me just get the chat open here. You don't have to worry about that, though, Santo. How are you, Santo?
Well, it's been interesting times, let's put it that way. Uh, I'm doing well today. It's been a very interesting couple of days. Don't know why, but there's a level of intensity lately that seems to come in waves, and sometimes it hits one, sometimes it hits someone else. I think I got hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It hit a couple of days ago. I don't know what it was, but I think it was food poisoning, but it kind of took me
Yeah.
out for a six. So
Yeah.
I think this issue of the unknown and how it does and doesn't affect us, I'm not sure how we're meant to learn other than direct experience sometimes.
Yeah.
And it helps us understand where the line is in the sand. Because unless we personally experience it, it's just hearsay. But when you do experience something, trying to work out how much of it is purely physical. You know, you took
Yeah.
something, you got food poisoning versus something else is going on.
Yeah.
And what I found interesting was it happened on the day that you did your show about, there was The Exorcist, and well, I forget what that show was called, but it was
Basically, I was working off that young man's work in the book, "The Nephilim Are Clowns," which
that's it, that's it.
he's I can't say for sure those are the Nephilim, but I can definitely say that that clown visage, as I described it, is yeah, absolutely, yeah,
And it kind of made sense. And I listened to one of his, and he had a very Christian slant on the one hand, but he made sense on the other. But he had this brilliant ad that kind of had a go at the whole concept of Halloween.
yeah,
And given that Halloween's coming up, I sort of thought that'd be a good one to just send as a reminder to quite a few people that Halloween has many sides to it. And it was well done. And given that your video had all the throwing up, I just don't know what that connection is because I'm watching this throwing up, and 5 hours later, I've had about five purges like I've never had in my life. And
yeah.
I think, is there a correlation
Well,
or
of
was it
course,
purely coincidental?
coincidence is the refuge of the lazy, Santo.
You cringe as I say coincidence.
Yeah, there's
Hey Bruce, I
Mhm.
was just unlucky. How about that? I won't use coincidence. I was just unlucky.
Yeah, you could say that. Now I'm getting a very low bandwidth rate, which is very strange. I don't know if this is going out okay or not. Very, very strange.
I have, and I only seem to have the problem when I'm with you. I don't know why.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Understood. Um, I don't know why either, Santo. I don't know why either. Hi, Chris. But let's make a go of it, and
okay,
let's see what we can make of this podcast. Um,
okay.
Hopefully, it'll
Well,
it'll
just
it'll be okay.
hopefully it goes. Just to start, as you sent a message through earlier, I was watching the latest Elon Musk with
Yeah,
Tucker Carlson, and I tell you what, if we're not in strange times, then tell me what that conversation they're having is all about.
yeah. I was
Uh,
watching it. I was watching it too, and I they had it beautifully time stamped. So I just watched the 5 or 10 minute sections that interested me the most. But Look, I think in all honesty, I have accurately assessed what's going on. We are in the midst of an alien invasion. And I almost feel like grinning and giggling a little bit to disperse some of the energy of that, saying that out loud and becoming suddenly conscious of how people might receive it, like complete tinfoil hat. But there's so many people that are just not getting this. So let's go ahead, Santo.
But when you say alien invasion, because that to kind of translate or to interpret what that could possibly mean. Um,
Well, I
one
was
person
just
that has,
I was just getting to
go
that
ahead.
actually when I ceded the mic to you.
Okay,
But go ahead
okay.
with the one person who
One,
has. Go ahead.
one person who has spent a lot of time on this topic and connected it through to the original invasion, in not so much in a spiritual way, but in a logical way, is Cliff High. And that connection through the alien invasion via that original, whether you call it the gods, the Elohim, the some
Elohim, yeah.
refer to as, yeah, the Elohim. But the connecting of the dots of that history of Anunnaki, our DNA being messed with, becoming who we are, how this has been going on forever, and it's not something new. Because I think when some people hear alien invasion, they think, oh, you mean they're coming? You go, no, it's already been here. It's kind of like it's really happening. So, how do you describe alien invasion that's
Well,
always
hold
been
on.
there
Well, no,
versus, yeah,
they've been here culturally. Okay,
mm,
so the religious artifacts are their are the culture they left here, and what we've been dealing with is the sort of ham-fisted human interpretation of this culture without their direct participation. What we're seeing
but what
now.
about But what about our DNA and our entanglement that's already there? How does that affect the narrative? You know, that we're
Yeah.
already were entangled. So even
Well,
though they're not fit, you know what I mean?
we've been genetically altered numerous times. This is covered in the
Yeah.
Galactic Historian. By the way, if anyone wants a copy of that book, just send me an email. You know the email address, and I'll send you a PDF of that. And yeah, so don't hesitate. I'm actually happy to give that one away for free, for reasons which I won't get into today. But the DNA structure is, look, I think a lot's been made out of this DNA stuff, okay? But there's only so much that can happen when two strands are working. And so when you look, first of all, let's visit the idea of junk DNA. Okay? So science tells us now there is the possibility for 12 strands of DNA, but it's dissipated and separated around the double helix. It's only the double helix that's working.
Mm.
Now, let me ask you this. With everything you know about the way spirit comes into matter, and everything is perfectly created, and if you don't understand that, come spend a month with me in the rainforest and you'll get it. Okay?
Mm.
You can see species are created here so fine-tuned that if you go 10 feet above the area in the mountain they live, or 10 feet below the little bandwidth in which they can live based on climate and humidity, they perish. That is the level of specificity within which the life force manifests life forms on this planet. Okay?
Right.
So, with everything we know about how precise, how intricate, and how beautiful the creation is, can you really imagine a scenario where the creative principle would create junk DNA. So it's not
No.
junk. It was once functioning DNA that was deliberately disabled, which is about, I think, the cruelest thing you could do to a species, right? So our
Yeah.
ability to receive or interact with the creators of us has been severely diminished. In fact, I would suggest even that, hi Sue, I would suggest that that this destruction of our DNA was a kind of abandonment of us, and sort of cap, like the way you cap a well when you're done with it, right? Just say, okay, well, we don't want anything to happen to the environment. Let's cap this well. Well, we created these human beings, and when you create something, you're responsible for it in a karmic sense until an age of
Yeah.
maturity. But spiritually, we were severely sabotaged from achieving a spiritual maturity. Now, it can be overcome, but the amount of work involved in it is mind boggling. So, what I think happened is that some knowledge came out of World War II, and extraterrestrials were a major part of World War II. Okay, this can't be denied. Extraterrestrials were a massive part of World War II. There was an extraterrestrial group working with the Allies, and there was an extraterrestrial group working with the enemy, I suppose we could call it, the Nazis, the fascists in Italy, and the Japanese. And when the war ended for humans in the timeline, the war didn't really end. And the war machinations never really ended. And both sides have been fighting ever since. And the only evidence I can, other than when I speak intuitively, and I speak from what I derive intuitively. Okay? Which, by the way, is different than psychic, okay? It's profoundly different than psychic. Now, the only evidence I can offer for my thesis is some of the testimony of the super soldiers going back to about 2012. And you've got that brilliant interview between Max Spears and James Casbolt with Kerry Cassidy. And they just
Yeah.
and Casbolt is incarcerated in Britain now, probably on trumped up charges. And Max Spears was killed quite horribly. He died in Poland with black goo coming out of his mouth. But if we go back to what they said, look, there are only two factions on the planet, the Nazis and the Zionists. Okay? What we call the rising China. Man, I should just turn off reactions, but they amuse me so much, and I don't even know how they happen. Like, I'll do that again. Two factions on the planet doesn't happen again. But um, anyone we see as rising, like the Chinese, that is staged and controlled by one of or both of the factions, because Casbolt and Spears posited that they had formed a truce for the joint mission of depopulation of the planet, which, according to Phil Schneider, is also the alien agenda. So we can assume that both the Zionists and the Nazis are working with what, from a human perspective, we would call negative extraterrestrials, meaning they don't have our best interests in mind. They're not compassionate. They don't want to see things grow, right? And we see this philosophy everywhere now, and we see it in our
Right.
medicine. We see it in our justice. We see it in our education. Everything is
Right.
about not. Go ahead, Santo.
Can I just ask? Um, that makes sense. You know, the Zionist Nazi collaboration, working with the extraterrestrials, a eugenics agenda. Where does the concept of the Elohim fit relative to that narrative and the aliens? Are they one and the?
Well,
Is there a? What's the relationship?
The Elohim, in my opinion, is just another name for a group we know. It's probably reptilian Anunnaki. This, what we're seeing, go
But
ahead.
what's their role? What's their role relative? Because the eugenics agenda and the way it's being played out is becoming clearer, and it's
Yeah.
becoming more obvious. But what seems to be sort of debated and argued is who's responsible for it, even when people agree it's happening. Some will go, oh, it's, Bill Gates, it's the WEF, it's the Zionists, it's the
Yeah.
Nazis, it's the aliens, it's the Elohim. Is it just all of them? And are they like a big mafia that have got
No.
together at the
Santo, come on.
Godfather table and agreed?
No, 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 no,
Sorry.
no. No.
So
No.
how?
Well, it's a series of it's a Russian doll where you get the narrative you discover. Okay? So there's certain people actively participating who may have had moral quandaries about what was going on. You're slightly off center your camera, by the way. I don't know
Oh,
if you're,
sorry.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so it's like a Russian doll, and folks, if you know what a Russian doll, it's a small doll inside a larger doll inside a large, so or it's a series of concentric circles. Okay. So there's an insider's pitch that's made to the religious people, and this would be given to the rabbis and the cardinals in the College of Cardinals in the Vatican. And it's a lie.
Yeah.
But it's a lie
Yeah.
that's above what the average plebe on the street knows. And so they feel special, and the lie that they would be told would be something that this is for the betterment of humanity, it has to be done. The consequences of not doing it would be far more grievous. And so
So that's a bit like the way they convince the average woke person to be
yeah.
pro climate change. Okay, so there's a relationship.
Climate change is a perfect example of herd movement. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
so they sell that. And our societies from time immemorial, or at least for the last two or 3,000 years, I'd say 2,000 years, they have always operated from a knowledge inequity, a profound
yeah,
knowledge inequity. So Europe was controlled by a Vatican in which the only literate people were the priestcraft. People could not
yeah,
read. The printing press had not been invented. I mean,
yeah,
getting access to to even look at a printed document, which in those days would have all been written out. So Bibles were written out. So I forget what
yeah,
order it was. It might have been the Franciscans. I think it was the Franciscans, if I remember my Catholic history correctly. Their job was to write out Bibles by hand, like one at a time. That's what,
yeah,
so they would get a monastery, they would get the robes, they would get the 3 meals a day, they would take their vow of celibacy, and so on and so forth. They would do their
yeah,
prayers, do their public service,
yeah.
and then part of the in the monastery job was writing out the Bibles. And so this is a very slow. Go ahead, Santo.
But just on that point, then they had a way to control the flow of information. So just on that
Well, hold
point that you
on.
just said,
Hold on.
has the horse bolted?
No, no, no. Hold on. You just perverted my narrative. You're
Sorry.
talking. The principle is knowledge inequity. When you say
Yeah,
control the flow of narrative, that suggests knowledge equity, and the control is distracting people from the totality of knowledge to focus on one aspect of the knowledge. That is a completely
yeah.
different paradigm than knowledge inequity. Knowledge inequity
Okay.
is I know, you don't know. Okay?
Right.
So to bring it up to the contemporary, the knowledge inequities functioning in the world today are I'll give one example. They would be heavily vested in computers. Okay? So one of the reasons the hedge fund managers become billionaires is they can afford a bank of supercomputers to do their quantitative analysis on the money system. And they
Yeah.
they start to hit an 80-90% accuracy rate, and they start to get monikers like the Oracle of Omaha, like Warren Buffett and stuff like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Warren Buffett, I believe, has been extraterrestrial connected his whole life and gets his information from the ETs. So this is a real deep dive
So
today. This is a non-normal
yeah,
Talamanca review, okay?
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. But just on that, then they've chosen that strategy that you've just stated.
Yeah.
That inevitably leads to where we are. You know, like you gave the example with the huge bank of computers, which inevitably leads to the transhumanist AI agenda because that's the only way you can
Well,
go
hold
with
on,
that
Santo.
strategy.
Hold on, man. We're
Right.
again, you've jumped off of knowledge and equity. So that's that's a step.
Okay.
I'm going up a set of
Yeah.
steps, and you keep running
Okay.
off the steps into the field like an 8-year-old. Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna lose the audience. Okay, so just
Okay. Sorry.
try to,
Slow down.
yeah, just don't, So knowledge and equity is how we've always been controlled. The present knowledge and equity is between those who understand what happened in World War II or aspects of it and those who do not. Okay? So let's get back on track. We're in the midst of an alien invasion. You correctly pointed out, you brought us to DNA, which, by the way, was brilliant, which was bringing me back onto the steps because I'd wandered into the field. DNA is critical, okay? So what's been going on?
True.
There's more in those vaccines than we know. And I mean more than even the best of the best have figured out. Even the so-called
And
whistleblower doctors. So why are they changing the
can I
DNA?
can I just say
Okay, Santo.
can I just say
Very tough to. Yeah.
that on that vaccine, that interview between Tucker Carlson and Musk, everything's going along, and the usual things you expect to hear, and him backing Trump and all the rest. And then the topic of vaccines came up, and Musk said a very strange thing, which is not surprising. He kind of didn't agree with the jab, but he said he believed in vaccines, and
Yeah.
he believed that um, polio and measles. So he overplayed in other words, he leaked aspects of the direction that he thinks in, which fully contradicts just what you said. In other words,
Yeah, but
you could tell from that moment it was.
there's a big distinction there. Okay. So and this is why language is so important, and I think this may be why the Spirit has invested so much responsibility in me in this period in the timeline, because the language is very important.
Right.
There was no polio vaccine. There was a polio inoculation. So
Yes.
so an inoculation is literally a little bit of the disease to give your immune system, but not enough to give you the disease, but to give your immune system a little taste of it to work up a defense
Yeah.
against it in case the disease ever comes into your body.
Yeah.
I think the
Wonderful.
AI reactions are with me here, right?
You just got a blast of that.
Yeah, I see it
I
here
think you'd be
too.
double, triple, quadruple vaxxed. Boo, you just got it.
So
Yeah, exactly what you said.
an
He could have
inoculation,
clarified. He
yeah,
could have clarified that. He could have
yeah,
said exactly what you
and
said, but he chose not to.
Elon does this a lot, actually. If you follow him closely, he does this a lot. Now, I don't think there's any malice in it. I think Elon loves human beings. Okay, um, I think he knows things he can't say. I think everybody at that level knows things they can't say. I think Elon probably knows exactly what's going on in the world, but he won't say anything because, okay, there's rules to the game, and remember, it's all a game. Okay, so as the people are getting freaked out listening to us, okay, I'm going to take this moment to remind everybody it's all a hologram, it's all a game. Okay, now it's an important hologram because until you pass the tests down here, you don't get to go to the next level of the hologram, which gets you to the next level, which gets you out back to pure spirit, and then you become an atom in the body of the divine. But if you go through all the cycles down here, once you go back to the divine, you, as an independent cell, you can take off as an autonomous cell and go into any of the universes or dimensions associated with that divine construct and do anything you want. It's complete and total freedom. So that's it's pretty amazing. That's the goal, right? So don't think you disappear and your individuality is gone. Right? It's your individuality is preserved forever. Okay, so Elon does this a lot. He gives a little bit of information, but he confuses it a little bit. Okay, now there are rules to the game down here. You can cheat a little bit. And Bob says all the time, "I'm a cheater, I'm Kiahi," but they're not really hacks, and they all pivot off of divine love, so it's not really cheating. If you figure something out on your own, you have the right, or it's given to you through a divine channel, you have the right to speak it publicly. If spirit, I say spirit when I'm speaking about the divine, okay? And it's the Holy Spirit, okay? And it's not what the Bible people say. It's something, it's a current of energy, okay? Very phenomenological, not an airy fair. Oh, the Holy Spirit came upon me. You mean there was an astral Pleiadian you couldn't see whispering in your right ear? Is that what you mean? Because that's really what's going on with a lot of these guys, and some of them have gotten quite clever, like the Christian podcast I recommended the other day. If you figure it out on your own, you're allowed to say it publicly. And they all have to stand back and go, fuck, he just said it out loud. And what they hope is nobody will listen to you. And that hope is completely fulfilled with the Talamanca Review at 194 subscribers. But even with only 194 subscribers, they're all over me. They're all over me, okay? So if you figure it out on your own, you have the right to say, okay? Now, I want to point out, for those of people who think I'm being egotistical or aggrandizing or anything like that, all of the 4 books I've written since 2019 have had severe injuries, life-altering injuries. People associated with the book who contributed to it, they either die or they get strokes or they get horribly attacked by invisible forces. And old Bruce just walks through all of this like a hobbit on his way to Mordor, right? And yeah, that's it. So if you figure it out on your own, you're allowed to speak about it. If you're told, and and they'll tell you before they tell you, you'll get something approximating a contract. The finger will go up in the air and they will say, you can never repeat this. Okay? And again, you asked earlier, how do they maintain the whole structure? And I gave you the Russian doll analogy. But even at mid-levels of the Russian doll, they get the raised finger. That's why you get the hangman's death in the Masons. That's why when you had that Pope killed after 33 days, you found Masons hanging from bridges in London. Okay?
Yeah.
They broke their
But
oath.
aren't we all in the same boat then? In other words, essentially, if I get it right, what you just said is, figure it out on your own and you'll be fine.
Yeah, but people are too
When you
lazy
don't figure it,
people are too lazy to do that, Santo. It takes thousands of
yeah,
hours of
but
meditation, divine guidance to the right material, living correctly, morality. People don't have that anymore. They just don't.
haven't we hit a point where a little bit like Elon Musk knows how to moderate the message relative to the point that you just made? Aren't we all in the same boat? That if you give the information and somebody takes it in a way that that information shouldn't have been done that way, something quote unquote bad will happen. Hence all those warnings in masonry. And in other words, does that principle apply in all scenarios, or have we hit a point in time where we don't, if we come with purity of intent, then that principle doesn't apply and bad things won't happen? In other words, information now is permitted
Yeah,
regardless of how it's expressed to
yeah,
whether it's your Telemanca channel or whatever.
yeah.
But if that were the case, why were people still having injuries and that when you wrote the books? In other words, let me ask you this. If you wrote a book now, another book, would you assume circumstances would be different where people wouldn't get hurt because we've reached a point now where that information is able to flow without blowback?
Yeah,
Or
I would say that something changed in The Devil in Us, which was just my book, but Bob did have a second plane crash. Okay, so I think something changed in that book in particular, and what happened in that book. By the way, in that book, folks, you're given a key to direct experience. It's not just words on a page. The vibration and energy of that book will unlock the other side for you, and it will begin to speak to you. If the experiences are negative, it's because, I hate to say this, but it's because that's what you deserve at that moment. Now, people, like I said, this is how much this banding of our cosmology, and why and people still do not understand what I'm saying. I get calls all the time from people, and they, oh, Bruce, you're demonically possessed. Bruce, you're okay, yeah, all right, blah blah blah. But the truth is, the demonic legions never rebelled. Okay, they chose a function in the cosmos that is part of our evolution while we're incarnate. That is a necessary function, like they're needed. Demons are needed, okay? If there were no demons, the world would be completely imbalanced, okay? Podcaster, on my podcast or on their podcast. But they, you know what? They won't come near me. And really, I've given them the perfect excuse. Demonic contamination. You can't engage Bruce. It's demonic contamination, right? So the, so
you know,
so the
you know
irrational,
what's interesting? What's interesting, Bruce, on what you just said, the more cultish the belief system,
yeah,
the more they validate their position by what you just said. It's kind of like they want to hear you say something that, in their weird inverted way, confirms in their head that you are demonized. It's
yeah,
so bizarre. So, in other words, they don't want to change. They have confirmation bias. And the more
yeah.
you invite them, the more they see that as confirmation that you are the devil
Well,
or the demon.
yeah, 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 yeah.
It's
I would.
weird.
Well, no, it isn't, because that's the trick. That's the trick of that form of mind control, right? That's the trick. So now you get benefits. Like I said, at every level of the game, you get a little bit something to make you feel special. So a lot of, and some of the Christians are very illuminated, and they can cast out demons, and they can do all this stuff, and in the name of Christ, and peace and blessings be upon him. Christ undertook one of the more difficult missions in this record of human history, okay? And for anyone thinking I'm anti-Christ, I love Christ. I love Yeshua. He's welcome to come visit me anytime, okay? And his love, his grace, and his guidance are welcome in my life anytime, as is Milarepa, as is all the other mystics and saints and avatars, as is the Buddha, as is whomever, as is Rumi, the poet. Anybody who achieves that state of consciousness you know. And this idea of some spiritual force coming in and saving you, when I was at my darkest moment, when I was truly going to succumb to what I don't even know what it was, but very, very dark forces that this motherfucker of a Sufi sheikh put on me for not converting to Islam, you know who stepped in? Milarepa. Not Jesus, Milarepa. So look, when you follow the near death experiences, what do people say? I saw Shiva. Really? Did you study Hinduism when you were alive? Never heard of him before I met him in my near death experience. And they come back with complete knowledge of who Shiva is, like a Hindu pundit. How did that happen? Okay? And all I'm really trying to do is show people that all these spiritual systems are fundamentally saying the same thing, and you have no idea the sin and damnation you're putting on yourself when you say to another human being, it's Jesus or you're damned. It's Muhammad or you're damned. You're damning yourself when you do that. You can say, Jesus, I was born in the West. The only scripture and theology and spiritual system I had available to me was Christianity. I studied it sincerely. These are the advancements in my consciousness. I understand this, and this, and I can depossess people. I said, welcome to the spiritual community, brother. But the minute they have you accepted Christ? No. Go away, sinner. That is the basis of every fucking war on this planet. That's how they get the human beings to fight. And until I see a Christian who says, for me it's Christ, but I understand why it's Buddha for other people, we're nowhere near an end to the negative control on this planet. Rant over, Santo. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I agree. But to go back to where we started with DNA, um, there have been people who talk about three-stranded
So hold on.
versus two-stranded. What's
Yeah.
that? What's that?
Well, that's the Dolores Cannon New Age crowd, okay? But I
It's all
wouldn't,
crap.
yeah. So I'm going to tell you what's going on now, and I have permission to say this, and I believe I'm one of the few people on the planet who has permission to say this. So imagine you have a $200,000 BMW or Mercedes, and the entire system is computer controlled, including the fob key. Now imagine hackers. Now I'm talking about the medical regime since World War II. I'm talking about all the stuff they've been putting into our body. I'm talking about the electromagnetic energy. I'm talking about 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. All of the waves hitting us. I'm talking about the chemtrails. I'm telling everybody now what's been going on and what they're really trying to do. Okay? So imagine you get brilliant guys connected to the Russian mob, PhDs in computer science, and they figure out a way to hack the fobs of these $250,000 cars. So their guys can go up to the car, boop boop, open the door, boop boop, start the engine and drive away. The guy comes out from wherever he was, up in his office, his car's gone. What the hell happened? BMW and Mercedes assured me this was impossible. The tracking mechanism has been shut down. They can never find the car again. You ready for it? That's what they're doing with our bodies, and they're being driven away by the ETs.
Interesting. It's kind of like MH370 on steroids. There was a plane, but now there's no plane.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what's going. It's an alien invasion. And the aliens, and this is not to say that the demonic legions don't work. I think one of the reasons I was introduced, first of all, I had profound karma with the demonic legions. I was born to a cursed bloodline. And for those of you listening to me, if you come from a family, a European family that has a shield, you're tied up in this too. Okay?
Yeah.
And the McDonald shield was one of the most powerful shields in Europe. Okay? There was a 300 or 400 year period where you could not win a war in Europe without Scottish mercenaries. They were called Galloways. And
Yeah.
they would show up, and they were like Spartans. They either won or they died. They never surrendered, okay? And this is what became of the Scots. They were
Right.
in many ways an early version of the super soldiers, okay?
Yeah.
S-
But what people say is when you have that conversation, it's a little bit like some people when you talk about a situation that's having to go. Don't be stupid. The government wouldn't do that. So whoever they are, when you have this conversation, people go, don't be stupid. They wouldn't do all those things because they'd be doing it to themselves. So
uh-huh.
why would they do right? So the
Well,
question I
I think
ask is there a
nobody's done this yet except
mm,
for the last thing which happened in 2020. And because that technology was so radical and went to the level of deoxyribonucleic, first of all, people need to understand. To my understanding, prior to 2020 and the release of this new regiment in our healthcare, I got to be very careful because I don't want to get blocked again, Santo.
mm, yeah, yeah,
Medicine had never gone below the cellular level. Antibiotics worked at a
mm,
cellular level. Chemotherapy worked at a cellular level. Radiation worked at a cellular level. Above the cellular
yeah,
level, there was cut, hack, and tie, which is what surgery is, okay? And I don't mean to debase it. I mean, there's, you know,
mm,
Jack Cruz himself is a neurosurgeon who's worked on people's brains his whole life, right? So,
yeah,
but our healthcare had never gone to the level of deoxyribonucleic acid, okay?
mm,
So
mm,
people, so as the medical community observes this, and by the way, I just have to say this as a general disclaimer: we're just talking woo today. This is not science
mm,
based. It's all opinion. It's neither information nor disinformation. It's just a fun conversation. Okay, so there's my disclaimer.
yeah,
Okay, so this is
yeah,
fair.
yeah,
This is fair speech podcasting. Okay, as they say in Miller, as the chief of police in Miller's Crossing said, Jesus, Tom, I don't know nothing. I'm just speculating on a hypothesis. Is all. You know. So, but it's very interesting that medicine has now gone down to the level of deoxyribonucleic acid through ribonucleic acid, which speaks to the deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay?
yeah,
Now,
yeah, yeah,
this is the hack level where the body can be vacated, whoop, and something else comes in.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think if you take what I'm saying today and go back and look at what you've taken in over the last 30 years since 1994, or when people started to post videos on the internet and stuff, or sell them on DVD. Remember that people used to sell them on DVD like that, you know. So when you go back to that and you go back to those early interviews, Phil Schneider came right out and said it because of the Eisenhower and people, you know, Cliff and other people are going on and on and on about the Elohim.
yeah,
I'm not sure that this is really about uh, the Anunnaki or the reptilians or the reptilian Anunnaki, which I think are the Elohim. Um, I think this has more to do with the tall grays who came in and met Eisenhower in the 50s. Okay? And
right,
before everybody gets all their shorts in a knicker and everything, and I know I reference movies a lot. Please forgive me for doing that, but it allows you to come up to speed really quickly with a simple image or a simple sequence of dialogue in a movie. I would cast your attention to the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still with Keanu Reeves. What was the mission of that being? It was the planet. Okay? So You want to invoke extraterrestrials. They will extraterrestrials will come to the rescue of the mother which gives life, and the mother is the planet. And if the children have become delinquent, the sentient species on the planet, and they're murdering the mother, you can be pretty well guaranteed you're going to get an extraterrestrial intervention. Okay? Now
Right. So
you
that's part of why they came
yeah.
when the nuclear activity was happening.
They're
That
not
they
they're not
responded to that.
they're
Was
not they're not doing anything wrong. And
yep.
is it not interesting that not only did I intuitively know to get out of North America, but in that same intuitive flow of magical realization that has no intellectual basis, I could never, as the grade 8 math teacher says, show my work. Okay? That's the job of a psychic. But then they always get spiritually hit by a train, which should be a clear indication to people that it's not good to open your psychic centers and try to outthink the higher spiritual forces. Okay? We have to submit. We
Yeah.
have to know what we are. We have to know our place. So this is not unjust what's being done. This is the big, okay? So we decided to start exploding bombs. We decided to start doing all of this stuff. Now, there are innocent people on this planet, no doubt, but the planet will be saved and they'll be able to continue. It's about having a place to incarnate to continue your material education, which takes billions of years, okay? In, you know, so that's what's really going on here. The earth is going to be preserved, but much of the human population is going to be taken away. Okay, and the
Yep.
walk-ins themselves. What's going to happen to the walk-ins? Well, I don't think they won't procreate. So and so why are we getting all these freaky people now? All of this, transgender and all of this stuff. Try to get your emotional reactions out of it and look at it in a Marcus Aurelius way. Look at it through the lens of Stoicism. What is happening here? What is really happening when all of your opinions and all of your emotional reactions are taken out? The human race is not breeding, which is an aspect of the depopulation, and a mercy, because I'm not sure you'd want to breed into this generation. Okay? Although, and you feel comfortable doing it, then by all means do it, right? Um, so this is what's going on in my estimation, Santo. This is an alien takeover, and they're driving away with the bodies like the Russian mob stealing the $250,000 BMWs and Mercedes. Okay,
Yeah.
back to you.
But um, so that kind of explains that layer of how you explain the medicine, and now it's tapping in via
Yeah,
the mRNA into the DNA, and
yeah,
then the
but
consequences
you
follow.
see,
What?
hold on. The people doing it don't even know what I just told you. So there's
No,
so
no,
if they're working in a narrative of supremacy like the Zionists, they'll be used too. You see?
right. But are
Every
there those? You know how they talked about blue bloods? Where does blood come into it? Are there species on the planet that do know what's going on and have something different about them in their blood? Even the issue of Rh negative has never been truly explained. Where does it come from? Right? What is it all about? So blood seems to be a big part of the mystery as well, not just in terms of the way you've described it as, blood of the lamb and all the sacrifice, but in relation to this agenda, there seems to be some correlation to blood. I don't know what it is. So when they talk blue blood, what was that all about?
Well, that was descendants of races that came here and are still astrally incarnating here. So go back to my analogy of the Tibetans consciously reincarnating and pointing out to people that for for this world to stay in balance, if you see something on the positive, it exists on the negative. If you see something on the negative, it exists on the positive. So we have a controlled incarnation within control-based people, not liberation-based people like the Tibetans, okay? So we have this control
Mm,
group. Now, in the transformation we're going through now, it's my belief that they're being liberated, which is what they want. They've wanted off this
right.
planet. They've wanted off of it for
Okay.
a long time. You can see it. I mean, when you look at the average Jew now, they're in a semi-suicidal state 24 hours a day. When you listen closely to Noah Yuval Harari, that's a suicidal human being.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. But
all of their intelligence comes out of the death wish part of the human brain. What does that tell you spiritually?
yeah.
I'm exhausted. Please let me out of this place. I cannot incarnate
Yeah.
here anymore. Okay?
But doesn't that fit in also with the way Elon Musk keeps banging on about going to Mars and creating, the future for humanity because this planet is doomed? Isn't it a different version of the same thing where
Well,
people are just
Elon
missing the
Musk Musk has not been let in on the secrets I'm telling you today and telling the listeners today. He doesn't know what's really going on. Okay? The human race
right?
can never be destroyed. Okay?
Yeah,
Well, I suppose the human race could be destroyed, but the individual units of consciousness growing in the third and fourth dimensions, living, dying, going to the astral, recuperating, reconnecting with love, coming back to physical, that whole thing can take place anywhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be on this planet. And so, like, God's love, the Creator's love for us is so it's unconditional. Okay, and God or the Creator has no suicidal tendencies. And so, given that we're an aspect of the Creator, we at a certain level of consciousness we cannot suicide. It's the human mental consciousness that being influenced by the spiritual, the unconscious, that wants to suicide. Okay?
right,
And it's
right.
because they can't
Hence the
find
suicide pods.
yeah, they can't find expression in this incarnation anymore. And there's reasons for that, and this goes back to what you just asked about the blue bloods, and they're working with forces that sort of gamed us even at the incarnation level. So the whole system became corrupted, not just the physical incarnation, the space between incarnations. This is why I don't put a whole lot of stock in near death experiences, okay? Because there's no
Yeah,
guarantee the person got out of the game, okay? So,
yeah, yeah.
but everything is changing now. I can assure you of that. The transition we're going through now is absolutely epic, epic.
So just like you say, there are almost death wishes, whether it's Harari or the very uh, uh, Jewish Jews in that sense. Wouldn't the
and
same apply, like
and Masons and a lot of the secret society people.
the royal, yeah, and the royal family? You can see that
Yeah,
internal kind of conflict and
yeah,
in a way that's never been there before.
yeah,
So, in theory, they should all start to become a little bit more fragile because the same issue applies to all of them.
yeah.
So, they're all faced with the same issue, right? So, essentially, this blood issue, I still don't understand the RH negative, why it's there. And nobody's ever been
So,
able to explain it.
well, you know the answer.
I don't.
Okay,
Tell
so
me.
you know what the R stands for, right? The RH.
Yeah, rhesus. Yeah,
And
yeah.
what's the rhesus?
The, the rhesus monkey.
Okay, so there's a portion of human beings on this planet that were sped up to be used as slaves. So they were taken from a certain point of evolution, DNA was mixed and they were brought up to a humanoid form. And the trace of that is the rhesus blood, the monkey DNA signature. The people who don't have that came in another way.
That's it. As
That's
simple as
it.
that.
It's,
But
you
it's
know,
just bizarre that a mother cannot give birth that is Rh negative without getting an injection to make what's in her womb compatible with her body. So, in other words, it's really interesting that even though that happened, it doesn't fit with the way we procreate because without intervention, they can't procreate,
yeah.
the Rh negative.
Well, yeah, they can. Sure, they can. What are you talking
Well,
about?
not a female, because if they fall pregnant and it is not Rh negative, the fetus, it will kill the mother.
Oh, I see.
It's incompatible. Yeah. So that incompatibility level, Rh versus non-Rh, is all the way back to procreation
Hmm.
as an incompatibility. So
Yeah,
were we never meant to mix? It just seems, even at that level, that there's this almost two strands of humanity on the planet at the moment.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I can't answer that for you. Okay. I myself am Rh negative, I believe. Yeah. So there you go.
Okay, that explains a lot.
Yeah, I'm Rh
I
negative.
knew it. I knew it.
Yeah.
Jackie's Rh negative.
And I
I
was
can pick them.
you'll find that a lot of Rh negatives were born by C-section.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not all of them. Jackie wasn't. But uh, that explains everything, Bruce. I
Well,
forgive you.
don't get carried away. And I don't know. I don't need forgiveness. But there it is in a nutshell. So, this is what's going on the planet. Believe it or not, folks, we're in the midst of an alien invasion that has no visible, at the level of sense mind, has no visible indicators, because it's like the BMW or the Mercedes being driven off by the Russian mob guy, where the car is a human body, and the Russian mob guy is the alien soul or the alien being coming into the body. This is the true alien takeover of the planet. All the ships blowing up the White House and everything, that was just so the monkeys could go, right? Again,
Yeah.
that's an example of a distraction narrative. Okay?
But is
So,
someone like David Icke in the current circumstances a distraction? Like when he started, maybe it worked, but in the current state we're in, to be banging on about the reptilians is counterproductive, isn't it?
well, so here's my thing with David Icke. When we're doing something in life, we have to make sure we're doing it for the correct reasons. So when I'm told to write a book, I write a book. But then I always want to write another book because I'm a writer. But if I'm not meant to write another book, I shouldn't write another book. I always say one of my litmus tests for whether some human race or not is, are they attempting to make a living at what they do? Okay? What do they do for a living? Right? You meet somebody like our friend AB,
Yeah.
and Andrew Bartzis, and makes his living at it, makes a very healthy living, $2 million a year giving people readings. Does it like does it like a mob underboss paying off a capo, 5 readings a day. I mean, think about all of the different kinds of lives that guy could have had. He could have easily made 150 grand a year just working with a small group of people, and making sure they were based and they could have gone out and spread out as a spiritual force in the generations. You could see just by the way he operated how corrupt he was. And I knew this even at the
Yeah.
beginning of the book, and Spirit told me, don't worry about him as a personality. The book is important. And then after the book was done, he blew up in the hospital for 6 months. This is what I mean. Like, you cannot fuck around with these forces. You do what you're told. You do it as best you can, and you say thank you for allowing me to be of service. Then you go play with your grandkids, or you play some video games, or you watch too much TV, or you do your meditation. Forget all about it. Don't get attached to it. Okay? David Icke is a similar case. He decided to make his living at it. You know,
Yeah.
he should have stopped like 10 books ago, right? And maybe done an interview once every year or 18 months just to remind people who need to find the material. It's out there. They go, they assimilate the material, and they go to the next step of their journey. But David did what everybody else does. David became a cult figure. Okay? Never become a cult figure, folks. It never
Yeah,
works.
it seems to be so obviously a repeating pattern, and the one that comes to mind is Jordan Peterson. You think
Yeah.
of how he started with a very valid thing to say, and then slowly got sucked into being controlled. In other words,
Yeah.
that concept of agency, I think, is really interesting point to see relative to everything you've talked about, because the agency of how the agendas are played is a critical part of the success or failure, and how much the agency has to be in the face of the person versus behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's quite a interesting, when you think about it as a visual, you go, yeah, there's never just one person at play here. Never.
Yeah.
What else is going on? And that
Yeah.
agency is a critical part of the facilitation of whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, if anybody wants to
it,
call in, it's Seen That Tinker 1 on Skype, or I can take a phone call and you'll come right into the Skype call. It's 864-810-1039. If you have a comment, make the comment. Dawn, please don't call just to hang out on the call like you did on Zoom. I have to, you can hear fine through YouTube, okay? You don't need to be on the call. It's a bit creepy too, to be honest with you. But if anybody wants to call in, just call in, make your point, and we'll discuss it, and then intuit the time for you to leave the call. Okay? I got to say these things now because, so 864-810-1039 or Seen That Tinker 1, and give me a call, and give Santo and I a call if you have anything to add to the conversation we're having today. Everything exists under the same creator, including the extraterrestrials. So your best chance at survival and continuity and a good life is to get to know the creator. Okay? And I would say the path Christ gave is good. And that, so there's nothing wrong with that. So I don't want you guys to think that I'm shitting on Christ. I'm not. I've already told you in this podcast how I feel about Christ. He's welcome in my life anytime. I do not believe in salvation doctrine, and I'll give you a little clue. Neither does Christ. You're saved just because you call upon his name. Do you think the evolutionary process down here would stop? It's just not feasible, okay? He can always be called upon when you're being attacked. That's actually his speciality, and that's why he's hated so much by the satanic circles, because he gave humanity the keys to having dominion over or salvation or safety from maliciously controlled demonic forces. And notice how I say maliciously controlled demonic forces. Okay, meaning demonic forces that have been hijacked by human agendas and secret societies and religious and rabbinical circles. And that's why they hate him so much. There it is in a nutshell. Anybody ever tell it to you that simply before? Because he took away their power and he gave you the power. And that's why they don't like the name of Christ invoked. Okay, so Christ has many utilities in somebody's spiritual life. You can be a Buddhist get demonically attacked and call on Christ, and he'll help you. He's not going to say, you didn't get baptized, I can't help you, right? So always remember that when you watch these movies like Nefarious, the great evangelical movie on demonic possession, that they're injecting their propaganda in there too, okay? Which is to fill the baskets and to make more of a living at it, okay? Truly spiritual people do not make any money from the spiritual work they do. Okay? Rumi didn't make anything for his poetry. Hafiz didn't make anything for his poetry. William Blake was considered a madman while he was alive. Okay? And they don't make any money. Okay? Spiritual service is always done because it needs to be done. Like filling a pothole on your street that the city or the municipality, it just will not get around to fixing. So you go to the hardware store, you buy with your pickup, you buy some asphalt, you get it out there, you get a tamper, you tamp down the asphalt where the pothole's fixed. Not because it had to be done. And this is another thing that this money system has done, is nobody will do anything unless they're getting paid anymore. And the things you're getting asked to do to get paid are getting more and more and more diabolical. Like, put this in people's arms, okay? And this is why the negativity is spreading, because there's all these captured people in institutions who are the 80% who failed the Milgram experiment, who simply do what they're told. And they don't realize what they're doing to themselves spiritually. You know, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Right? But they still have to pay the price. Like, what's that really based libertarian, Mark Passio? He's absolutely right when he talks about natural law, and he says the consequence is upon the order taker, not the order giver. Because you facilitated the manifestation of that behavior in 3D, you own it. And this is how they keep their hands clean. This is why I focused so much on the money system in the light of darkness. This is how they get away with it. You want, they must be aligned with the divine, Bruce, because they never get punished. Their minions sure do. Okay?
Yeah. Actually, before you go, Bruce, can you just, because this podcast talked a lot about the extraterrestrials.
The battery's going on this. I'm getting warning.
Just quickly, a little bit more on what are the extraterrestrials? Where do they come from?
Another podcast. Next podcast. So I got to go because I'm about to lose you, and then everybody's going to get the echo when you speak. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.